All right, y'all. It is time. It is time. I'm now going to give you my official prediction for the 2024 election. So before I get into some maps for you, and I got them lined up here, let me first play for you. This is a Harry Enton clip on CNN from a few days back. And we covered on Crystal Kyle and Friends the bull case for Trump, and this is now the bull case for Kamala. So let's watch this, and then I will get into the maps. And I don't know, some of my maps here might surprise you a little bit. Here we go.
Harris, simply put, is more popular than Donald Trump. Her net favorable rating is higher than Trump. She's at -2. Trump's at -7. I went all the way back since 1956 and looked at the polls. Does the more popular candidate usually win? The answer is absolutely yes. 16 times the more popular candidate has won. Only one time the less popular candidate has won. I will note that was Donald Trump back in 2016. But of course, remember, Hillary Clinton was quite unpopular herself. But the bottom line is this. Kamala Harris has been consistently more popular in the polls than Donald Trump is. She's consistently had a higher net favorable rating than Donald Trump. And normally, usually, the candidate who's more popular goes on to win on election day.
Before we go any further, let me stress that point for you. Kamala Harris is not a little bit more popular than Trump. She is a lot more popular than Trump. And look, he lays out the counter argument. The counter argument is, okay, well, who was that one candidate who was more unpopular who ended up winning? It was Donald Trump. He beat Hillary Clinton when he was a little bit more unpopular than Hillary Clinton. However, the margin was tiny. The margin was tiny. There was like maybe a 3 or 4 point difference in terms of favorability or likability, or popularity, right? With Kamala, she is consistently double digits more popular than Trump. Double digits. And in fact, I think he cites, she's -1 in their polls. But most of the polls I've seen on Kamala's favorability have her above water right now. She's in the positive territory. And there was that, story the other day in Newsweek, the poll that they were citing where Kamala right now is as popular as Obama was in 2008. And he was like a once-in-a-generation type candidate on the campaign trail. So it's not a little difference like it was with Hillary and Trump. It is a big difference. And beyond that, when you look at the VP, J.D. Vance is way more unpopular than Tim Walz. Tim Walz is actually the most popular person in this race, and J.D. Vance is the least popular person in this race. So this is just one data point that's like, it seems like a really high, tall mountain to climb for the Trump team to be this much more unpopular and still end up winning the election. All right, let's keep going.
Democrats are fond of that saying, forget the polls, when we vote, we win.
Yes.
And you see something in that.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the special elections, right? Democrats in special elections, their performances the last 2 years. What has happened? We're looking at state legislative and federal special elections. On average, these Democrats have surpassed Joe Biden's 2020 margin by 2 points. And remember, Joe Biden won. So the fact that these Democrats have been doing better than Joe Biden's been doing is a good sign. Historically speaking, there is correlation between how folks do in the special elections, especially in this polarized era, and how folks do eventually in the presidential election. It was actually one of the warning signs last time around in 2020, where Democrats really weren't doing that great in special elections, despite the poll saying that Joe Biden was going to win rather easily. It suggested Trump would do better on election day. This time around, the special elections are suggesting the opposite, that in fact Joe Biden, because Democrats have been exceeding Joe Biden's margin, that maybe Democrats will actually do better than the polls have been indicating.
But what about the fact, two factors. Yeah. One, the right track, wrong track. Country, so few people think the country is going on the right track right now.
Yeah.
And also something you pointed out yesterday as a factor, which is Biden's bad approval rating.
Yeah. So yesterday I pointed out that very few people think the country is going on the right track. Very few people approve of Joe Biden's approval rating. You can see it right here. In 2024, it's just 28% who say the country's on the right track. 40% approve of Joe Biden's job. But remember, in 2022, these metrics look awfully similar. In fact, slightly less believe the country was on the right track, slightly more approved of Joe Biden's job, but very similar numbers here. And remember, even though the top metrics were bad for Democrats in 2022, the White House party did historically well in that midterm. So the bottom line is, Kate, a lot of Democrats believe when voters vote, they win. And with abortion being a much bigger issue this time around than historically speaking when it was in 2022, Democrats did historically well. Perhaps Democrats will surprise a lot of folks and do historically well come next Tuesday.
Very interesting.
So in other words, the right track, wrong track number, that's like the strongest argument for Trump today in this election. But the problem with that is, as they're pointing out, the right track, wrong track number was almost identical in 2022 in the midterms. And you had everybody and their grandma was predicting red wave, red wave, red wave, red wave, red wave. And it didn't happen. Democrats massively outperformed the polls. So what that means is is that factor going to be determinative for the election? Is that factor going to be the thing people really are thinking of when they cast their ballot? And the evidence we have to this point is no. So in other words, the best argument for Trump still fails on its own merits. So you have Democrats overperforming in the midterms, Democrats overperforming in the special elections. The other thing is, normally if Biden was running, put his cognitive decline aside, he doesn't have, he would have the incumbent disadvantage, if you will. So I think that number would hang around his neck way more than it hangs around Kamala. Because in a weird way, there are not clean lines here. It's not like the incumbent versus the non-incumbent. It's really not. Because Donald Trump was president. He was the main guy for 4 years. Kamala Harris has never been the main character. She's the VP, right? So you could even make an argument that, the incumbent, I think it's a disadvantage now, would hurt Trump more than it would hurt Kamala Harris. Because we saw him govern for 4 years. We never saw Kamala Harris govern for 4 years. She's the VP. Biden's at the top of the ticket. He's the one making all the decisions, right? So, in other words, again, even the best argument for Trump is kind of failing here. It's kind of failing. Okay, now, time to get into some maps. Time to get into some maps, y'all. Oh, and I should make this point, too. In 2016 and 2020, Trump himself was underestimated in the polls, right? And Republicans are really relying on that being the case again this time. But here's the problem. The pollsters have, in my estimation, overcorrected. And now they're sampling too many Republicans and too many MAGA folks, and they're not sampling anywhere near enough young people and older women. In fact, there was one pollster, I believe Marshall is the name of the pollster. They said that the other day. They were like, hey, here's our final Michigan number. It's 49 Kamala, 48 Trump. But oh, by the way, we actually now think we're massively missing with who we sampled. We don't have nearly enough young people. We don't have nearly enough old women. So Kamala's winning in this poll, but honestly, he's probably even leading by more. That was the point that they were making, right? So the pollsters are terrified of missing again where they underestimate Trump. So now I think they've sort of overestimated Trump. And that's where we are. Okay, so here we go. Now I'm going to show you 3 maps, okay? The first one is my most bearish on Kamala. And in other words, my most bullish on Trump. You ready? So this is the first map. Sort of like a worst case scenario for Kamala or best case scenario for Trump. Here we go. In a worst case scenario for Kamala, best case scenario for Trump map, I still have Kamala winning 276 electoral votes. 276 electoral votes. So again, worst case scenario for Kamala, best case scenario for Trump, here's what would happen. Kamala still wins Nevada. She still wins Nevada in this scenario. And I'm convinced of that because of the early vote numbers that have come in. It started out looking good for Republicans, but it actually wasn't. That was a bit of a head fake because it was, they have early in-person voting, and that's when a lot of older Republicans went to go vote. But as time has gone by, the Republican number has collapsed. The independent number and the Democrat number has gone up and up and up. And Democrats are going to be, more likely to, as they don't go like the very first day, they've been going later on. And so now the Republican advantage has totally collapsed. I think Nevada is done. So Kamala still wins Nevada. Arizona, I gave to Trump in this best case scenario map for Trump. But even that, I sort of struggled. Even that, I felt like I still think Kamala's going to get it. The pro-Trump argument for Arizona, you can say the most recent poll I saw, I think it was a New York Times poll, they had Trump +4 in Arizona. But Arizona has a let me double check this to make sure before I open my mouth. No, I'm right. Arizona has abortion on the ballot directly. That really hurts the Republicans and Trump. The other thing is Kari Lake versus Ruben Gallego. Kari Lake is losing by double digits. It's just hard to imagine a scenario where like Ruben Gallego wins by 13 points or whatever and Kamala doesn't beat Trump. So again, this is my worst case scenario for Kamala, best case scenario for Trump map. In this map, because the last poll that I saw from I think it was the New York Times coming out of Arizona had Trump +4. You can make an argument about the demographics of the state of Arizona. Biden barely won it last time, right? That I went ahead and gave this to Trump in the best case scenario map for Trump. Okay. Then we have North Carolina and Georgia. So Biden barely won in Georgia. He lost North Carolina by, I want to say, 2 points last time. So I know that in Georgia in particular, you have sort of Republicans up and down at the state government level. And, you know, as far as the swing states go, those are ones that are more typically associated with Republicans. Maybe historically they've leaned a little more right, certainly lately. So I went ahead in my best case scenario map for Trump, worst case scenario for Kamala. I gave Trump North Carolina and Georgia. But here's the thing, again, even in the best case scenario map for Trump, I have him losing the blue wall states, right? I have him losing these states. I have him losing Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. I don't see an argument based on the polling, based on all the data we've seen so far. I don't see an argument for him grabbing any of these states. I just don't. So again, best case scenario for Trump, worst case scenario for Kamala. Kamala still gets to 276 electoral votes. Okay. Now, let's split the difference. This is what I would say is my most realistic map, right? My most likely to be close map, okay? This one is Kamala 319, Trump 219. Democrats 319, Republicans 219, okay? With this map, this is probably the one I lean most towards, okay? You have Kamala wins Nevada, Kamala wins Arizona, Kamala wins Georgia, Kamala wins North Carolina. Kamala wins Pennsylvania and the blue wall states. So this is basically Kamala winning like all of the swing states. The reason why this one I feel like is my potentially most accurate map is because I do think the pollsters are hurting. Hurting means they're just, yeah, it's 50-50 or 49-49. It's tied, bro. What are we going to do, bro? I think they're hedging because they want to protect their reputations. And if they just say it's 50-50, whoever wins after, they can go, see, we said it was 50-50. One of the people won. Woo, look at that. And we'll do a story later on. Nate Silver is now even accusing the pollsters of hurting. So when you have the major pollsters hurting, and you have the Atlas Intel and all these other Trafalgar and all these other right-wing pollsters flat out making shit up that's pro-Trump. Right? Let's just call a spade a spade. These are the people who were most wrong in 2022 in the midterms, and they're out there confidently like Trump +8 in Iowa, right? When the right-wing pollsters are making up pro-Trump shit and the respected pollsters are hurting, it is giving this misleading impression of like a super-duper close race, right? Or if anything, like, it's leaning a little bit towards Trump. Just like, I think now Nate Silver flipped it to slightly pro-Kamala, but just the other day, he was still... Trump, 52% chance of winning. It's amazing to me that Nate Silver can admit, yeah, they're hurting. The major pollsters are hurting, and these right-wing pollsters are garbage. But then he like uses them in his prediction, right? He uses them in the prediction. That doesn't make any sense to me. So if my read on that is correct, they are undersampling young voters, undersampling angry older women, then there really is a giant sleeper Kamala vote out there. And in that scenario, basically all the swing states are going to end up going to her, right? So this is my, let's call it the middle map, the split the difference map. It's Kamala 319, probably the one that is most quote unquote realistic, right? Now let's go to my bullish for Kamala map. Bullish for Kamala map, y'all. Bullish for Kamala map, y'all. Bullish for Kamala map. You ready? In this map, she wins not only every single swing state, I also gave her Iowa, and I gave her Florida. This boy done lost his mind, y'all. Did I lose my mind? Did I lose my mind? We're going to find out, right? So this is best case scenario for Kamala. She wins Pennsylvania. She wins all the blue wall states. She wins North Carolina, Georgia. She wins Arizona, Nevada. And she shocks the world by winning Iowa and winning Florida. Florida is not supposed to be a swing state. It's not. But there have been some polls now that have come out of there that are like Kamala down 5, Kamala down 3. This is like the ultimate test of, is there a sleeper Kamala vote theory? You know, let's think of it like this. Let's say there's a 3-point miss in a pro-Kamala direction, right? So the pollsters are hurting, plus you got the right-wing pollsters who are just dragging the average towards Trump, right? This would be like a Kamala 3-point miss in her direction, and that would take Florida and make it genuinely competitive. The other thing is Rick Scott is on the ballot there, and he's just universally hated. When he's won his races in the past, he only wins by like 1 or 2 points in Florida, right? So I think the Democrat there in that race has a chance. It would be earth-shattering, and the election would be over quickly. But I don't even need to tell you guys why I put Iowa in there. The reason I put Iowa in there is because even though that's typically viewed, not a swing state, right? And let's see, Hillary lost it by 10, Biden lost it by 9, right? But in the final Selzer polls, Des Moines Register poll coming out of there, they were both down by 7. So she was pretty close when all the other pollsters were like saying, "No, you're crazy. It's closer than that," etc. She was like, "No, I'm right. I believe in my methodology." She was very accurate with her polls, right? The Selzer poll just came out the other day. It's Kamala plus 3. I need you to understand that anything for that poll that was Trump plus 7 or worse is a disaster for Trump. Even if the poll had, Trump plus 5, that would have been a disaster for Trump. He needs to be winning, in order for him to run a good race, he needs to be winning Iowa by like 12 points. So in other words, is the Iowa result a microcosm of how the whole country is right now? That there truly is a sleeper pro-Kamala vote. And by the way, the numbers for independents and the numbers for older women coming out of Iowa were absolutely cataclysmic and apocalyptic for Trump. If that is replicated to one extent or another across the country, there's going to be some surprising results. And that could manifest in Kamala winning Iowa, winning Florida, etc. So again, to reiterate here, I'll break it down for you guys one more time. Ready? My most bullish on Trump, bearish on Kamala result is Kamala still wins 276 to 262. My split the difference, middle of the road, probably most likely result is Kamala 319, Trump 219. This is basically her winning every swing state, but nothing else, right? And then my most bullish on Kamala, bearish on Trump, is Kamala 355, Trump 183. And this would mean Kamala wins all of the swing states. So Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, but also throw in there Iowa and Florida. So that's my breakdown. In other words, I think Kamala's going to win. And a final point I'll make here is a very straightforward one. She has just run a better campaign than Trump has. She just has. Another data point on that is, what was the number? Trump was only winning 89% of Republicans in that Selzer poll, I believe it was. Or was that the YouGov poll? Forget. It was one or the other, but he was only winning 89% of Republicans and Kamala was winning like 95 or 96% of Democrats. And so she genuinely has like picked off plenty of disaffected Republicans, getting the breakaway independents. The older women are coming out strong for her. She's just run a better campaign. It's been more grounded, more issues focused. She really leaned into economic populism down the stretch with the anti-billionaire ads, really painted him as the extremist that he is. And he's not shutting up about trans issues and talking about Arnold Palmer's dick and fantasizing about the media getting shot at his rallies. More on that tomorrow. The MSG rally was an epic disaster. They really let the MAGA freak flag fly. It was like MAGA on steroids and human growth hormone, and everybody was repulsive. And the other thing is they are way too terminally online. The Trump campaign has terminal online brainworms. They're just disconnected. It's the worst campaign I've ever seen him run. 2016 was his best campaign. 2020 was worse than that. 2024 is worse than 2020, right? So I just think she ran a better campaign. And there's your breakdown. We'll see. I'll either look like a genius or like a giant fucking idiot. I guess we'll find out. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.